Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bookish Hour. I am Sarah Burr.
Hi, and I am J.C. Kenney, and it is an exciting night. Happy Baby Friday, folks. And Sarah, I think it's time. What do you say? Let's get bookish.
I am ready to get bookish. I've been ready all week. I am so excited. I've been excited for this conversation since December when we first had our special guest for the evening on for a bookish moment, our very first bookish moment. So we are delighted to be joined by Leah Dobrinska once more, talking all things cozy, all things mystery. It's going to be a great time. Leah, for our viewers who may not have been able to join us during your moment with us, do you mind giving a little bit of an introduction?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Dobrinska, and I am a small town romance and cozy mystery author. And I am thrilled to be back on this platform with Sarah and with Jim. So thank you guys so much for having me tonight.
Thank you for coming back. It's great to see you again.
Yeah.
We had a great conversation when we were speaking about the release of your latest mystery book, Death Checked Out. But I also understand that since that time, you've also released another one of your Mapleton romance novels. You want to share a little bit about your Mapleton series? Because I know that we've talked a lot about Death Checked Out, and we'll talk more about it because it's an amazing book. But let's give our viewers a little bit of a teaser about the Mapleton novels.
Yeah, so like you said, Death Checked Out was my debut cozy mystery. It came out in December, but actually for about a year and a half prior to that, I was working on a small town romance series that is very near and dear to my heart. I call it the Mapleton series. It's set in a fictional town based very closely off of the small town where I grew up. So I named the fictional version of this town Mapleton, and it was a 3-book series until just recently, and actually earlier this month, I published Choosing Love. It's just this teeny tiny little novella, which is a fun book for me to have out in paperback. I gave this story away to like my original newsletter subscribers as a thank you for taking a chance on me as like a completely new author. But I've always loved this story. It's a military romance, brother's best friend trope worked in there. And I just had a ton of fun with it. And selfishly, I really wanted it on my bookshelf as opposed to just an ebook. So I decided to beef it up a little bit. I added a chapter and a kind of a bonus epilogue and put it together as a paperback for readers who really loved Mapleton and wanted to go back there.
Well, I can understand like why you want it on your bookshelf because the cover is absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you can hold it up once more.
Oh my gosh.
I absolutely love it. All of your Mapleton novels have such beautiful covers.
Thank you. I think so too. My cover designer is phenomenal. Her name is Anna, and she knocks it out of the park every time. I always just tell her, you do whatever you want to do because I completely trust you and your vision. And she has brought Mapleton to life every time for me. And she just keeps getting better and better. So I'm so grateful. I'm glad other people like them too.
Yeah, they are. That's an amazing cover. And not to, get too heavy here, but military romance, is it a little autobiographical maybe?
Actually, yes. So,
okay.
We were a military family. My husband was in the Marine Corps for the first about 5 years of our marriage. So, it was kind of trial by fire for us. We got married and moved across the country, and he started a bunch of training in different schools, and we were living away from our families, and it was cool to work that into a story. The characters in Choosing Love were our side characters in the first book of the Mapleton series. So I just kind of like always had them in my head. I always knew what their story was, but I never put it wasn't fleshed out in Love It on Deck Cafe, the first book in the Mapleton series. So when I set about to write the novella, I was like, well, this just sort of poured out of me because I knew what the story was for these two characters. And a part of it was autobiographical in that I could kind of infuse it with some of our own experiences as a military family.
Now, Leah, did you write this after Love on Deck Cafe? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so Love It, yep, Love It on Deck Cafe, I wrote first. But then as I was kind of like in the lead up to publishing that, I honestly had about a weekend where this Choosing Love story just kind of like happened over the course of 48 hours. And I just, my family didn't see much of me. And I wrote the whole thing kind of as that newsletter magnet that I was like, I'm going to give this away to people. So it came out in my newsletter before Love It on Deck Cafe published. But I had written them in reverse order. So I knew the side characters from Love It on Deck Cafe, wrote their story, published that first in the newsletter, and then published the big book, the big first book, a couple months later.
So when you were revisiting the novella to bring it into paperback form, you added additional chapters to like beef it up. What was that like, kind of getting to go back and revisit your work and like add more stuff to it?
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience because I don't often reread things that I have written. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but once I have something published, I sort of like to think about it as finished. And I don't know if I would go back to it. I feel like I would nitpick it a little bit and find things that I would maybe want to change or tweak. And I'm just happier to let it sit and let others read it. But this was a different case. Again, this story was so like close to me, and I remember it so distinctly because of how quickly I wrote it and kind of those pieces that were very personal. So it was fun to revisit, fun to like reread some of the parts and just kind of have a chuckle or like, oh, this was cute. And then to kind of build out a chapter that I always was like, oh, I should have written the family dinner scene. You know, I just had sort of alluded to it. So it was really neat to be able to have the chance to go back and fill in some of those blanks that I had sort of left for myself. And then having the opportunity to write an epilogue was a product of where I have gone with the rest of this series. So I have kind of an outlying book, which would be book 4, I guess, of full-length novels that's semi-written, probably in like the very first rough draft stage right now. And I'm not sure when I'm going to publish it, but the main character of that one would be a sibling of one of the characters in the novella. So I was sort of able to tease that a little bit. And I wouldn't have been able to do that originally because I didn't have the rest of the world and the storylines worked out.
That's awesome.
You know, and one of the things that I think is so cool about the romance genre is what you've just been kind of talking about is the community. Yes. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, in the cozy mystery genre, you know, is one parallel between the two. Could you talk to us a little bit about, you know, not that you've moved from one genre to the other because you write in both. Can you talk about maybe some similarities or maybe some differences between being a romance author and a mystery author?
Yeah, totally. Well, and you can speak to this too, Jim. But I think the setting piece has been a constant for me in both genres, both in my romance books and in my mysteries. And I call myself a small town romance author because the small town setting in which I'm basing these books is so important. Like it is the piece that kind of sets my romance books apart. So that was a really smooth transition from romance to cozy mysteries, because for me, the cozy mystery setting kind of makes or breaks a book for me. If I can see myself in a place and want to get invested in a community, in a cozy mystery, I'm all in. So when I set about writing the mystery novel, Death Checked Out, and the Larkspur Library series, I knew that I wanted to create a setting that lived up to my Mapleton setting, because so many people have told me that they read the Mapleton books because they want to go back to that place and they feel like they fit in there and they want to meet those people and they want to like sit at the coffee shop and they just kind of feel this immersiveness for this world. So I wanted to emulate that in the cozy mystery novels that I was working on. And it's my hope that people feel the same way about Larkspur. So I definitely think the the setting plays a huge role. And then just character-driven stories. I think in cozy mysteries, obviously, like, you have to have an amateur sleuth who you can root for and who people can get behind. She carries the story, really. And of course, there are her sidekicks in the community, but I feel like your amateur sleuth has to have like such a solid character arc and just like storyline. And I was able to translate from my romance characters a lot of that too. Like, you got to have the interplay between the characters in the romance novels working for readers to get them to root for your characters in the story. So definitely those two things, the strong characters and the setting that everybody wants to visit, totally cross over between the two genres.
I definitely want to visit Larkspur. I absolutely love it. And before we dive more into talking about Death Checked Out, I just want to give a shout out to all our wonderful viewers who have joined us live this evening. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you. Hello, Claudia, DHB, Mark, Mary, Jill, Mizan, and Grace. Hi. Thank you for being here. We are delighted to have you. And of course, if you have any questions for Leah as we are moving through our show, feel free to pop them into the chat and we will get to them as we can. Leah, you had mentioned the process of like revisiting your previous works, that you don't really do that. I need to ask, how do you not do that writing a series? Because I feel like I'm constantly having to refer back to things because I forget people's names. I forget how people are described. And like, yes, I have all of these like reference documents that I've made, but there are times where it's like, I know I have said whether or not my character has a marble countertop or a granite countertop in one of these books. Like, where is it? What is it? How do you keep everything straight moving forward if you're just like kind of stepping away from past work and teaching?
Yeah. So, oh gosh. Well, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at this, and I should clarify. I will go back and find those sorts of details. Eye color. There's like roses are red, his eyes are blue, but you said they were green on page 52. So it's like I have had that happen before where I'm like, oh no, I better double check to make sure I know what color hair this guy has. So I'll go back and find that if I haven't made a note of it. But I do try not to read large chunks of my previous writing, I guess, if I were to clarify that point. But I try to keep a series Bible, just a document with all of the pertinent information that I've woven into previous stories, just characters, their occupations, where they live in town, kind of like the locations. That's a thing that I've had to get better at, pointing out and reminding myself of, like, okay, you said that this building was kitty corner from this building, so you better remember that in the future, that like this character can't go, you know, how the direction, like you got to make it realistic, and you can't expect a character to get across town in 5 minutes if they don't have a car, you know. Mm-hmm. So all those things like that, that I think go into making the story believable. I try to like make notes for myself so that I can reference and make sure that I'm keeping myself honest.
What would you think if a reader was looking through your notes? What would be the most like strangest or surprising thing that you've made a note of for the future that you think they'd be like, why the heck is she putting this down?
Oh gosh, that is a great,
without like too many spoilers. And Jim, I'm going to ask you this question too, because I like the things that I have found in my notes. There's one where it's like the clock is over the stove and the bathroom is next to the laundry room. And it's like, why am I making these notes? But it's because I've said them before in my books, and it's like I try to be as consistent as possible. So I'm just like always trying to make these like random ties from books to books.
Yeah. Yeah, I have notes like that. The way that I set up the library in Larkspur, it's part of the like the town hall complex. Mm-hmm. So it's in the same building as the mayor's offices and the town's police department. So in my head, the library, like there's like a block of windows that looks out over the hallway that sort of connects it to these other municipal buildings or offices. So I've like made note of that. Like there are windows on both sides of the library. So you have like your exterior windows and your interior windows, but they're kind of in a fishbowl. That, and then I was very specific in what type of desk lamp existed in the middle of the library. So I have like lamp with emerald green glass shade and pull chain like written down somewhere, because I want to remember that that is the type of lamp I've identified as being in the library research space.
I mean, that's what we have to do. JC,
Yes.
do you know like what the most like the randomest or most odd thing that you've put in a note for your books?
I think for me is I'm a big map maker. They're homemade, but that is all the way down to the point that for my Allie Cobb mysteries, I actually made a layout of Allie's apartment. And so I used that. And so kind of, I'm despite the fact that I'm a writer, I'm a visual person. So, I like those visual cues. So I don't have so much as I don't have the note as much as I have all these little drawings. It's like, okay, this is where this is going to be. And then for my Darcy Gone books, since those are set in a record store, I'm fortunate that I set the record store based on a store I go to all the time. So I don't really have, fortunately, I go to it enough that I didn't have to map that one out.
So smart. That is the key to realistic locations. In my writer brain, I am like picking places that I can visualize because I've been there, and I'm tweaking them to make them fictional. But for the most part, the layout is the same.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Sarah?
I think that I don't have places around me that I enjoy going to. So I'm always like creating just places that I would want to visit and that I daydream of. And it's like, yes, I could describe TJ Maxx, but that's not a cozy mystery setting. So I am definitely, I've never done the layout of a building itself, and I should, now that I'm thinking about it, because I too just draw out my entire towns so that I know how long does it take Hazel to drive from the southeast part of Lake Glenmire to the northwest part, and so that I have these times in my head, because Leah, like you mentioned, if somebody doesn't have a car, how long is it going to take them to get from point A to point B? Or if they do have a car, how long does it take? And making sure that that's consistent through the series that you're working on. So I definitely lean into the visual, so much so that for my Court of Mystery series, I just I have to have the map in front of me. And I was like, if I have to have the map, I'm sure that my readers have to have a map, because they're like, where the heck are we this time, since we're changing nations. So I definitely, I love the visual. I guess I juggle both of them. So
yeah, kind of along that line, we've got a question that we'll get to from audience member Grace. But Leah, I'm kind of curious, since Sarah brought it up, as far as maps go. Are you a pro map person? Because I know if there's a map in a book, I'll go back to that map constantly. What about you?
Yeah, I am all for maps. I was actually just thinking as we were talking, I'm like, could I pitch that? Can I ask my editor if we can add a map? But I think that maps are awesome. And I think maps, and I don't read a ton of fantasy sci-fi books with world building, but I think maps are crucial in that sort of book. But also I am the same way, Jim. If there's a map in a book, I am constantly okay, where am I? Flipping back and forth and totally visualizing the characters as they move throughout the story. So 100% pro map.
Yeah.
We are a pro map podcast.
Okay. That if we ever form a political party, that is our basic plank right there. Maps for everybody. Sarah, you want to ask Grace's question?
Yes. From Grace, we have, which do you find more challenging to write, Leah, romance or mystery?
Ooh, good question, Grace. I think that romance novels and mystery novels are both challenging but in different ways. I think for me, it has been more of a challenge, more of a brain stretch to write mystery novels, because of the need to be so proactive in the writing process in terms of dropping clues and having a very tight plot. I think for me personally, before I get too far in, because I kind of need to know where I'm going, when I'm going to lead readers there, but not do that too soon. And so I think for me, writing mysteries has been more of a challenge just because I want to make sure I'm doing that well or trying to do that well. And that involves a little bit more forethought and planning for my brain than a romance novel, which again, I'm trying to keep readers on their toes with those as well. But they're a little bit more, I don't want to say predictable, even though they are, right? Like a romance novel is going to have a happily ever after. It's just kind of how you get there, but they're a little bit less, the requirement for me is a little bit less upfront. I can just sort of like write a love story and see where it takes me. And for me as a plotter, as a mystery novelist, I need to think it through a little bit more on the front end, and make sure the pacing is where it needs to be with the clues and the red herrings and when my characters are uncovering things and when I want readers to sort of start picking up on things. So for me, it would be the mystery novel that's a little bit more challenging.
You know, you bring up a really good point there, in talking about, the challenge of, writing maybe a mystery novel. Maybe there's a little more plotting involved at the outset, but really, at the end of the day, I think it's fair to say that for both genres, it's really about the journey rather than the destination. And I think that's something that it's really important for us, to tip our hats to romance writers and romance readers, because, being taken on a journey, that's not easy to do. And so kudos to you for being so excellent at that.
Oh, well, thank you. And shout out to all of the romance authors who are doing it so well and setting the bar so high. And same goes for the mystery genre. I am constantly in awe of my fellow authors when I read mysteries. That's how I learned to write a mystery based on books that I have read. I've not once read a craft, a specifically mystery based like craft book. I just take notes based on other authors and what they do, because it's so amazing to me how people's minds work, how their brains work, and these stories that authors are creating. It's incredible. So I learn a lot from my fellow authors.
I would think that the Jim, what you had been mentioning about the journey and the pieces that come into play to get that journey across the finish line. One thing that I think just like the light bulb went off in my head a couple days ago is that, yes, I'm writing about one person's point of view. And, in a romance, often it's your female protagonist, your male protagonist, or your two love interests being presented. But there are a lot of other people's point of view that you have to figure or factor in to these stories, because not only are your main characters taking action, but the people around them are taking action. And maybe this is more applicable for mystery writing, but also having your sleuth to anticipate how the police are going to act or how a potential suspect is going to act, and working through those different scenes is really taxing on the brain. So I'm wondering, Leah, how did you get into writing more about your detective, and maybe tell us a little bit about how the police are involved in Death Checked Out, and then we'll dive into Greta and her friends.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an area I think in my mystery books that I want to continue to improve on. I feel like it's an area in my writing that can get stronger, based doing more research and reading more, just kind of like getting better at writing the police presence in my cozy mystery series. But I always had the image of who my police detective was going to be when I set out to write this mystery. He was well formed in my head. So Detective Mark McHenry is his name, and he's sort of a stick in the mud. And I don't love the police are worthless, they can't do anything right, so that's why the amateur sleuth has to step in. I'm not a huge fan of that. So Detective McHenry is very good at his job, but he just suspects Greta my amateur sleuth as his main suspect in Death Checked Out. So their interplay right off the bat is very antagonistic as a result. And you have Detective McHenry, who is very like stoic, serious, doesn't really like, he's kind of unflinching. And then you have Greta, my amateur sleuth, who's like the complete opposite. She is bubbly and cheerful and like rose tinted glasses almost to a fault. So working them together was a lot of fun. And I set it up that way because I just, there's something about opposites and the way that they attract and repel. So I had a ton of fun with the interplay between Detective McHenry and Greta. Had a lot of people wanting to see a romance brew between the two of them, which was actually hilarious. That was a lot of the feedback I got. People were like, oh, would have liked to see more romance. And I was like, all right, you know what? Like I've got a whole romance series. Like we're getting there. So yeah, I'm excited to continue to play with that relationship. And like you said, Sarah, I think for me, it gets easier to factor in the main, like the sleuth's response and awareness of other characters the more I write in the series, because the character, like I get to know them better and I get to know how they interact with each other. So as I've been working on book 2 in the Larkspur Library Mystery series, I feel like that piece of it has come a little bit more smoothly for me this time around, just because my characters are already anticipating what the other characters are going to be doing, and the kind of like banter and back and forth between them just feels a lot more natural to me as a writer this time around. I think because it's been established in book 1.
Well, I tell you what, our listener, watcher, viewer, Mark agrees with you, Leah. He specifically said he always enjoys it when the police are good at their job. Yes. And so there you go. Yeah.
I think thinking about the books that we all write in the mystery genre, I think we lean in that direction. And like JC, for Allie Cobb, like her ex-brother-in-law is the police chief. And she has that respect and understanding with him. And I think that I definitely, it's definitely easy for the police not to be good at their job. But I think a way that we as cozy mystery writers can get around that trope is our cozy sleuths have the ability to kind of go a little bit, they don't have to be above board with everything that they're doing. Breaking and entering, hacking into a computer, what have you. They get to have a little bit more fun and don't have to be by the book, which I think can be really helpful when we're writing mysteries, because, as I listen to true crime podcasts, I'm beginning to learn that like the police can't do everything overnight. Things take time. Like the DNA samples take weeks to get back. And, we've all been conditioned after watching Criminal Minds, CSI, that it's like, oh, like you just plug it into the computer and get an answer. But luckily, that's not really how it works. But I think that we have to remind folks that, police work does take time, and our sleuths get to bend the rules a little bit to get to the bottom of their mystery. So I'm wondering if you can tell us, Leah, a little bit about, without giving too much away, how Greta goes about her investigation and what she has at her disposal to really get around what the police are doing.
Yeah, so Greta is a librarian, which I think I said this last time. She likes to know things, and what she doesn't know, she knows how to find out. That's her background in research, right? And knowing where to look for certain pieces of information. So she definitely takes full advantage of the library's databases. And I also think, so it's interesting, Greta is relatively new to Larkspur in Death Checked Out, but she's been there longer than Detective McHenry. So he is even newer. So I think what she has in her back pocket is a little bit more of the knowledge of the community and some of those relationships that she's formed. And I see this even working its way into book 2, just kind of being able to tap into those community resources. Greta, as an amateur, and as a well-liked member of the community can sort of find things out a little bit quicker, just through the grapevine, versus, like you were saying, Sarah, the detective who has to go through all the proper channels.
Nice.
And speaking of proper channels, it is about halfway through, our time, which, Leah, this has been fabulous. It's always so much fun chatting with you. But the good thing about us being halfway through is we get to let y'all know about something special that Leah is bringing to the visit. So, Sarah, you want to kind of fill everybody in on that?
Yes, of course. So, folks, those of you who are joining us live, make sure that you are logged into either your Google account, your YouTube account, so that you can enter in for tonight's giveaway. Leah, would you like to showcase what you are providing our wonderful reader?
Yes,
a beautiful copy of Death Checked Out.
Yes.
Another gorgeous cover, too.
Thank you. It is one of my favorites. I do love this cover. I can't wait to have more in the series lined up next to it.
I think it captures it so wonderfully, especially with Greta like hanging out with her friends, which we will talk about in just a few moments. But for those of you who would like to enter for a chance to win a signed copy of Death Checked Out, Leah, what would be the magic word that they type into our chat box?
Yeah, I think we're going to use the word Larkspur tonight as a nod to the town. So Larkspur is our magic word.
Larkspur. So folks, if you'd like to enter, go ahead and type Larkspur into the chat. If you spell it wrong, don't worry, I'll still pick it up. No worries. And we will draw our winner at the end of the show. So stick around because we still have 30 minutes to go, which is really exciting because thinking about the time that we had with A Bookish Moments, like, we would have already been done. But we get to talk, we get to talk more. We get to talk about Greta, about Josie and Iris. And would you like to share, Leah, the inspiration behind the friends that Greta has supporting her?
Absolutely. So we've mentioned how the amateur sleuth needs to kind of drive the ship in a cozy mystery, but she wouldn't get too far without her trusty sidekicks. So in my mystery, when I set out to write a mystery, I knew that my librarian, Greta, I wanted her to have two best friends, or two friends in town. And it just made sense to me that they worked together because I knew Greta was going to be using her librarian kind of acumen to solve this murder, and it made a lot of sense for her to have her sidekicks there with her and kind of having access to the same information that she did and just allowing them to spend as much time together as possible. So Josie and Iris are Greta's best friends, and they are also her co-librarians. So Greta is the library director, newly hired in Larkspur, and Josie and Iris are her two pals. They are very much my nod to Nancy, Bess, and George from the Nancy Drew series. So that came about pretty organically, but also I think in the back of my head, I always kind of knew that my three main characters were going to mirror Nancy, Bess, and George from the Nancy Drew series. So they are a ton of fun to write, and I love watching and getting to experience their personalities coming through the story.
Kind of along that line, can you tell us a little bit about Larkspur itself?
Yeah, so Larkspur is a town in northern Wisconsin. So it's set in the Wisconsin Northwoods. It's a small town on a lake. So it's just this beautiful, idyllic setting. Like we were talking about before, I based Larkspur off of a resort town that my family used to visit. Every summer growing up, we would go to this lakeside town. I had to embellish quite a bit because the town that we would go to was just like one street and then like a bar and this resort like that of cabins that we would stay in. So if you read the book, you'll see there's a resort of cabins that is kind of my homage to where I used to spend summers as a kid. But I had so much fun building Larkspur out. It is just this quaint little town. There are so many fun places, the resort being one. But then Greta lives in a log cabin right on the lake. So the cabins are kind of like set up on the hill, and then the lake is sort of in a basin below. And all around the town, there's one of my favorite spots is the local cafe. It's called Mugs and Hugs, which I think is the best name for a cozy mystery cafe. But that's where Greta, her friend Allison owns the cafe, and she can go there to get a lot of information. and local gossip and news too.
I think that like the cafe is like one of my favorite places to create when I'm world building, just because it is like that central hub where folks can go to really, get the details on what's happening. You mentioned the campground. Are there other spots, or maybe, and this is maybe teasing a little bit about book 2, but are there other locations that we are going to get to visit in Larkspur?
Yeah, so there's a taco restaurant called Everything's Coming Up Tacos, which is one of my favorite new places that it's mentioned at the end of book 1, but we actually get to go inside in book 2. And then there was also a food truck appearance, I think. So that's another fun place that I had a lot of fun kind of fleshing out. And book 2 features the fall festival in Larkspur. So if you can kind of picture like the main road running through town, kind of all with different vendor booths and Ferris wheel and kids games and different craft sites. That's been a fun setting to work in. And then there is a local like supper club. I don't know if you guys are familiar. I don't know. Is supper club culture a thing in other places, or is it just Wisconsin? I don't know. We're in fish fry season, so it's top of mind here. But there's like an old school supper club that'll play a role in book 2 as well.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
that's great.
And Mark mentioned that you mentioned Nancy Drew. He spotted your Nancy Drew books behind you.
Yes,
so
there they are.
Okay. I hopefully I'm not going to stir up too much controversy here. Oh, there we go.
I have my little pocket like right here.
Yeah.
If you had to pick, I've never read any Nancy Drew, I'll admit, and I need to change that. I admit that too. Growing up in the 70s, I was like, okay, I was supposed to read the Hardy Boys. I don't know if I read any of those anyway. So, for a person who's never read any Nancy Drew, Leah, and then Sarah, feel free to chime in here. What would you recommend? Do you have a favorite Nancy Drew book?
Yeah, I do have a favorite. I read them all in order initially, so I liked following the series through. You certainly don't have to, but I preferred. I mean, as a middle grader, I liked reading it in order. Maybe that's my personality type shining through there a little bit, but I love book 3, The Bungalow Mystery. It's one of my all-time favorites.
Okay.
I did not read them in order. I read them like whenever I could get my hands on them. I believe it was my aunt gave my grandmother just like a huge paper bag filled with Nancy Drew books. And I grew up in Maine, and there was one winter when we lost power from an ice storm for 2 weeks. And we lived out of one room in our house, and I had this bag of Nancy Drew books that I just went through. And I think my favorite one is still the Spider Sapphire mystery. Nancy goes on safari in Africa, so it was just like this amazing adventure. And then I also loved, I think it was The Ghost of Blackwood Hall. Because that one has like a really like scary life or death experience that I was like, as a kid, I was like, these people can't die. I love them. Spoilers. Everything's okay. But those are like the two that like really stand out in my mind. I love them.
So good.
Very cool.
Yes.
So, Sarah, Evan wants to know, was that the ice storm of 99?
I want to say, I thought it was 98, but
okay.
I don't know. Evan would probably know more than me because he also grew up in Maine. So.
Well, I have my Nancy Drew reading in front of me now. So, thank you both for the recommendation.
And it sounds like, Leah, so you're working on book 2 of Larkspur right now.
Correct.
What else is going on in the Larkspur world? I think you have some exciting news to share.
I do, yes. So I just found out that I'm contracted for a 3-book series for the Larkspur Library Mysteries. And I just found out from my publisher that the books were picked up for audio as well. So all 3 of the Larkspur Library Mysteries are coming to audiobook. And I'm so thrilled. I couldn't be more excited.
I love audiobooks. I love listening to mysteries on audiobooks. As listening to my own audiobooks, I find, and this is probably where like my revisiting of my work comes into play. I'll be listening just to hear like how the performance is portrayed and like how different characters are presented. And there are just some things that it's like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that I wrote about that. Or, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this huge plot point that I was going to expand upon at some point and never did. Or this romance or what have you. And so I think that audio from a writing perspective is also like a really helpful tool because you get to kind of revisit your writing in a different manner. You're not hearing your voice in your head, which is always really helpful for me.
Yeah. I agree. I also have an audiobook deal for the Mapleton novels, the first 3 Mapleton novels. So because I independently published those, so I'm not with a publishing house, but I was able to get like narrator sign off for those. So I had to approve the narrators, which was the first time I've ever heard anything that I've written audiobook in audiobook form. So listening to those snippets of my own story was so surreal. I had a moment, and this is my imposter syndrome showing, but I was like, oh my gosh, like this sounds like a real book. Like it sounds good. Like this is okay. So it's just a super cool format. And I love listening to audiobooks, mysteries and romances alike. So it's fun to think about my words in that format as well.
I will say I had the very same experience where I was listening to a scene, and I have to give all of the credit to my narrator because she is phenomenal. But like, if you can get like teary-eyed listening to something that you wrote, it's like, wow, like this is really amazing.
Yes.
So it's a great experience. I can't wait to hear how Greta's world is brought to life. That's super exciting.
Thank you.
What else are you working on? You mentioned, are you heading back to Mapleton? It sounds like you're working on a 4th book.
Yeah, so I'm a little undecided about what's going to come next. So right now I'm focusing on Larkspur, and then I actually have a brand new series sort of plotted out. The first 2 books are written, not well, but they're written. So this is a romantic comedy series. So it's a little bit of a diversion from just the straight contemporary romance that I've been working on with Mapleton. But yeah, a completely separate world. And I had a ton of fun with the characters, just being a little bit more, I don't know, like voicey. I wrote it in first person, more like stream of conscience writing. So I just had the inspiration for this story, and it wouldn't leave me alone. I had no intention of starting a new series, but sometimes when the muse hits and it just like keeps hitting, I was like, well, I'm just going to go with this. So I wrote that, and thinking I'll probably, if I can get Larkspur in decent shape early this year, I'm thinking I'll maybe self-publish a rom-com this summer. So that's what's next.
That's exciting.
That's cool.
I think this is probably something we can all share our wisdom on. But Leah, so you have Larkspur, Mapleton, this developing rom-com. How do you juggle so many different characters and so many different places and all of those storylines together? I
am still looking for best practices, if I'm being completely honest. But I will say that it has actually been creatively very freeing for me to be working in different worlds and in different genres. I wrote so much of Mapleton before I even had any intention of publishing it. So I kind of had a backlog of Mapleton stories built up a little bit. And then I shifted gears to Larkspur, and that was kind of a way to, like I said, stretch my brain in a different way and just sort of get to play with a different setting and different characters and a whole different genre. So what I like about writing in different locations and with different genres is the ability to just kind of hop from one to the next. If I'm feeling burnt out or stressed out by one, oftentimes that's the signal to me that it's time to work on something different. So I think that might have been a little bit of what it was with striking out on this rom-com project too. It was just like my brain was ready to try something new. But then I set that aside and I've been all in on the mystery recently. So it really kind of does free me up and gives me the flexibility to follow where my whims take me, and work on what's next.
I think
that's
you hit a lot of good points. JC, what about you? Do you have any like best practices that you can teach me and Leah?
No. But the one of the things that I did do is when I went from writing Allie to writing Darcy, Allie is in first person and Darcy is in third. So that was a way to help me kind of make that shift that Leah, you were talking about, that, because in those two books, both of them are located within an hour of Indianapolis, Indiana. So there wasn't that big of a difference in terms of setting, really. Mm-hmm. Two different towns, but still there wasn't a lot of big difference there. Now with my new series, that's set in the Florida Panhandle, so that's a whole different new world down there. So I think for me, what I was able to do with that one is also kind of maybe to your point, Leah, this one has a lot of really over the top, it's hard to describe, really oddball characters. And so I think it's one of the things that I've been able to do is not only consciously juggle the different points of view for my main characters, but also make sure that I've got some really interesting supporting characters to go along with my main ones. That way it's like, oh, I can't wait to get back to this town and see what this person's up to, kind of thing. So anyway, that's what I'm trying. What about you, Sarah?
I think the characters is a really big one for me. Because I went from writing in the third person to writing in the first person, and both Hazel and Coco present their stories in first person point of view. However, Coco is this end of the extrovert spectrum, and Hazel is this end of the introvert spectrum. So they have very different personalities that I can play around with that help me keep everything straight. And I do set them, Court of Mystery is set in like a fantasy realm. We've got Hazel in upstate New York, Coco's on the beach. I definitely try to keep them as separated as possible because I will get them confused if I don't. So, but JC, can you share a little bit about this new project that you're talking about? Because I don't know if all of our viewers know what you've got in the works.
Yeah, so I am very pleased to share with everybody that I've signed a 3-book deal with Thule Publishing. It's a small independent press that is going to publish my Elmo Simpson mysteries. This is a series, as I said, set in the Panhandle of Florida. I have kind of pitched it as if you're familiar with Katrina McPherson's Last Ditch series, so kind of a humor, coziest mystery, cross it with maybe a little bit of Carl Hiaasen or Jimmy Buffett with the Florida, throw in some margaritas and some island music, and there you have Paradise Springs, Florida, where I'm going to be spending the next at least 3 books. So I'm very excited. It's a new, it's going to be a new challenge, a new adventure, and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks for asking, Sarah.
Well, I'm super excited. Even though I got a sneak peek of it, I can't wait to see it come out in the world, in the wild. Very exciting. And Leah, you have your rom-com project that is down the pipeline. I'm glad that this isn't going to be the last time that we're talking with you, because we are almost 10 minutes to 9 o'clock. And the reason why this won't be the last time we're speaking with Leah, is that JC and I are amazingly celebrating the 1 year anniversary of our very first live stream.
Wow.
In March. We launched this on kind of just like, hey, let's give it a try to see what happens. We were celebrating the release of Record Store Reckoning and Follow Me for Murder. And then it just grew into this amazing community, and we couldn't be more thankful, more excited. So we are going to be having a special 2-night anniversary event called Mystery March Madness. Mark your calendars, please. It's going to be a 2-night event because we have a lot of authors to chat with.
Yeah.
March 14th and 16th, we are going to be joined by Leah. We are going to be joined by Karina Moss, who writes the Cheese Shop Mysteries. We're going to be joined by USA Today bestselling author Annette Dashby. We are going to be joined by Agatha nominee Joan Long, and we will have more guests appearing. It's going to be really exciting. We can't wait to share this with you and spend hopefully another year talking all things bookish. So please make sure you mark your calendars and hope you can join us. We couldn't be here without you, our viewers, who tune in every week to experience and share your love of books with us. So thank you.
Yeah. And hey, Sarah, we got to ask you, you have something new in the, pardon the pun, in the books in April, do you not?
Oh, I do. And I am like right in the thick of things right now. The next trending topic mystery is going to be released April 25th. Tag Me for Murder. I am working on my edits right now. I've seen the cover. I love the cover. I could not be more excited. I can't wait to share it with all of you guys when the time comes. I'm pretty sure the Bookish Hour folks will be the first to know. So it is, I'm having a lot of fun. I can't wait to talk more about it. And yes, I'm super excited for another book to be out in the world. So
awesome. Good news all around.
Good news all around. And the bad news is that we're running out of time. And I want to do another shout out in our chat. If you guys have not entered in to win a signed copy of Death Checked Out that Leah is generously giving away this evening, make sure you type in Larkspur in the chat and we will pull our winner's name very shortly. But before we get to that, we have our wonderful wrap-up segment. What are we reading? What are we watching? Leah, what is keeping you entertained these days?
Okay, so I just recently finished the second book in the By the Book mystery series. It was called On Spine of Death by Tamra Berry. I love that series so much, and speaking of audiobooks, the audiobooks are next level. So that is by far has been keeping me entertained. I love that series. I can't wait for the next one to come out. I don't have to wait too long. It's coming out this year. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, do you want me to go into what I've been watching? Is that what you said?
Yeah, let us know.
Let's see. I have been watching Gilmore Girls for the first time in my life. So many people told me that Mapleton and then Larkspur reminded them of Stars Hollow. And I was like, I have no reference point. I have never seen the show. So I started watching it. I just finished season 2. So that's been a ton of fun. And I also caught the most recent Hallmark Movies and Mysteries new mystery, Curious Caterer grilling season. It's one of their new signature mysteries. It aired earlier this month. And I thought I was thoroughly entertained. So I enjoyed that one as well.
Nice.
Well, very cool. How about you, Sarah?
I feel like I've said this for many episodes in a row now, but I have been woefully neglectful with being able to sit down and focus on reading a book. So I've been actually reading a lot of manga recently. I absolutely love watching anime. So the manga that I'm reading is, I think it's called Her Royal Highness is Her Royal Highness Seems Angry. They have the strangest titles and names, but it's very enjoyable. It's about like some girl who like body switches with a princess and all of this like fantasy stuff. That's a lot of fun. But I'm also reading, and this is going to show like my nerd flag a little bit. But both George and I are getting into this game that's called Middle Earth, and it's a strategy like tabletop game.
Cool.
Talk about book maps. This like beautiful
nice
book map. Like I was like, we have to get this book just for the map. But I'm having to read it because it like explains what each of the like pieces of the game does. And I have to figure out how to play this game. So that's one thing that I've been reading. What I've been watching, I am obsessed with Three Pines on Amazon Prime. Oh my goodness. I don't want to watch the last episode because I don't want it to be over. Absolutely wonderful. I'm probably going to get a lot of boos in the chat, but I haven't read the books. So I am like fully invested in these characters. I know I posted this on Facebook and everyone's like, the books are better. But I was like, I don't know. I really like this show. So the books must be absolutely phenomenal. And then the other thing that I'm watching is, again, anime. It's the 6th season of My Hero Academia. And that's just when I'm done with a day of edits, I need to like watch something mindless. And that's what I'm watching.
Cool.
Jim, what about you?
Well, I tell you what, you're totally talking my kids' language between, RPGs and manga and stuff like that. They'd be totally with you on that. So what I am watching, I'll give a little hint with the cup and, the guy right here, Star Trek Picard, season 3. I am a lifelong Star Trek fan and am so excited to have season 3 of Picard and all of the original cast members from the Next Generation. And it's just, there have only been 2 episodes so far, but it's been a lot of fun. Another thing I've been watching, kind of on a sci-fi kick, I guess, is Travelers, which is a Netflix series starring Eric McCormick, who a lot of folks know from Will and Grace. And, I won't go into a whole lot of detail. It's sci-fi, time travel, some really fun stuff. What I'm reading is, a new author to me, H.L. Marseille. It's A Long Shadow. It's book 1 in the Detective Shadow mysteries set not in London, but just outside of London. It's one of my fellow Thule authors. So I thought, you know what? Okay, since they were kind enough to sign me, I'm going to show them a little love. So it's really interesting. I love the police procedurals that are set, there in the UK. They're so wonderful. And Sarah, I got to say, as far as Three Pines go, I've read Still Life, the first book. That's the only Louise Penny book I've read, but it is a pretty much a banger. So when you get around to it, you're going to be in for a treat.
Okay, that's good. It's like I cannot get enough of this series. It's so good.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we've got some really great recommendations. Folks, if you ever want to share what you're reading, let us know in the chat. We are always looking for our next good read, our next good watch. I, however, am going to be pulling the winner of tonight's giveaway. If you bear with me here, drum roll, please.
Sorry about that.
Our winner tonight is Mark Baker.
All right,
Congratulations,
Mark.
Mark.
Wonderful. Awesome. Mark, if you can go ahead and email us your mailing address at giveaways@thebookishhour.com. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone who took time to be here this evening, to be with us. Thank you, Leah, for spending time. And we can't wait to chat more when we have our special anniversary celebration, March 14th, March 16th. It's going to be a great time. Can't wait to chat more things books. We will be back with another episode of the Bookish Hour in 2 weeks. And for those of you who are watching our authors and would like to appear or are interested in getting involved in what we're doing, feel free to check us out at itsbookishtime.com.
Yes.
And we would be happy to connect with you. So again, Leah, thank you so much for being here. Real quickly, where can folks find you? Where's the best place to connect with you?
Sure. So I am at What Leah Wrote on Instagram and Facebook.com/What Leah Wrote. And then my website is leahdobrinska.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter there. So thank you guys so much for having me. This is always just the best.
Well, thank you, Leah, for being here. I encourage everybody to go follow Leah on Instagram. She makes great, funny reels. They'll brighten your day. And again, we can't wait to chat with you all the next time on the Bookish Hour. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Have a happy weekend. And we will see you when we see you. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care, folks.